Disability Rights California is interested in this because we represent people regardless of status. Our community includes people in immigration detention, so we use our authority in order to investigate, advocate for people in all settings, which includes the Adelanto detention facility.
The Investigations Unit in Disability Rights California has spent time in the past looking into the conditions of detention at immigration detention centers, specifically the experience of people with disabilities.
We go into facilities across the state that house people with disabilities and or provides programming for them. And so we may investigate something based on complaints that we get or just things that we have heard regarding potential abuse or neglect. And then we follow up and do investigations. We usually follow that up with reports and advocacy and sometimes negotiations to try and make situations better for people with disabilities.
We're about 2 hours outside of Los Angeles with good traffic, and we're in a very isolated area. May or June 2025, Disability Rights California heard and received complaints from the community about poor conditions in the Adelanto detention center.
When we came to Adelanto, we came to check and see how people with disabilities are being treated, if they're getting access to their medical needs, if they're receiving reasonable accommodations based on their disability needs.
Through my work in the investigations unit, I go into prisons, state hospitals, acute psychiatric facilities. The Adelanto detention center was very carceral-like, so it felt like a facility that I had seen people who were convicted of serious crimes be in. However, when I spoke to people and asked about their criminal involvement or if they've been convicted of any crimes, most of them didn't have any offense other than being here in the United States unlawfully, which is a civil offense. The conditions of confinement are not suitable to people that are civil detainees.
Honestly, I felt really bad because I believe that if you're doing things right, you're following the laws they set, I think it was like a betrayal to have arrested me because I was following what they were telling me to do. I was taking every step. I wasn't disregarding their laws. I wasn't doing anything against what they were telling me to do. I followed every step, and they really didn't tell me absolutely anything. When they arrested me, it was like, oh, the new administration is detaining you, and we don't know why. These were simple decisions that are being sent to us from above, and we have to do it. There was no reason in my case, and I explained my case, and they said no, they didn't let me say anything at all. Nothing. Only that I remained under ICE detention, and that's all.
As I was walking down the halls, as I was peeking through the doors that were for the people detained, their bedrooms, I just saw faces trying to catch my attention. I'm sure they were wondering what department I was from, when I was there. And to be honest, walking down those halls just made me think of my uncles, my cousins, myself in a locked setting. It was just a very surreal experience for myself. And I'm someone that has gone to various settings that are locked, but it just felt different this time. In total, the investigations unit interviewed 18 individuals that are detained. I heard a lot of people having issues managing their diabetes. They explained they had issues accessing their medication in a timely manner, and they also complained about the delay in food and the irregularity of the meals. Another big issue that I heard was concerns with respiratory illnesses going around. They explained there was waves of flu, waves of fever in different units, and not having medication to cope with those symptoms. So it just shows that the facility is not adequate. It was not prepared to serve so many people.
My head was hurting so much. My eyes, my entire body was hurting, and I was sweating a lot. I was like tosiendo mucho, coughing a lot, mucus, a lot of mucus. I couldn't breathe at night. I couldn't breathe because they no clean. We had to do everything there.
When we were there, they were very clear from the beginning because we were cleaning since we were there, and it was for our health, because we all started to get sick at the beginning. We had colds, we had coughs, we started to get fevers, so we all started to clean. But they were very clear from the beginning, we're not going to pay for that work, which was actually their responsibility, because they had to keep it clean for us. Even though we lived there and we cleaned our own place, our bed, our space, but they had to have the tables and everything clean. And we had to do it ourselves because they wouldn't. Not even the garbage, nothing, nothing. We had to throw away our trash, pick up our trash, wash our bathrooms, clean our tables, clean absolutely everything.
People were not getting basic needs met, which included access to water, regular access to food and clothing. Water jugs that they were putting in different units were being filled in the morning, and maybe in the afternoon, the evening, but they weren't there during the middle of the day. So people were getting dehydrated. This was affecting their health. People were getting food at varying times of the day, and this has a specific effect on people with disabilities. Someone who has diabetes, for example, they take their insulin, but they also need to balance out their blood sugar with food. This was an issue for people that we heard that were having this problem and not being able to regulate themselves and having symptoms because of that.
DRC is working in partnership with local groups to not only investigate complaints and respond to our community's needs, but also to identify solutions and work towards an immigration system that's more humane and respects people who contribute to all of our communities.
We support families with legal support, humanitarian assistance, and much more. And the basis of our organization and coalition is advocacy work. We work to change policies and also with impact litigation, do advocacy for individuals who are detained and affected by immigration enforcement and deportations.
Even interactions with mental health staff, for example, are very cursory. They're very short. They say, I do get checked in by somebody. They come every 2 weeks, maybe for like 10-15 minutes.
I get sick when I was in the town, so I was starting hearing voices and all that, and I asked for help, and they called me. Finally, they called me. I was lucky because many people, they don't get help.
When you told the psychologist your symptoms, did the psychologist give you any treatment?
No, nothing. Just, I will see you in a month or 2 months. That's it.
Did you see her again in 2 months?
Yeah, and they say, you're okay. You don't have nothing, so you're okay.
Therefore, the mental health suffers a lot, and it's all reflected in the face, in the body, the nutrition, and everything, because everything that's happening is regrettable. Was there access to some resources for mental health? When I first got there, in the first month, there was one person that came and asked one out of 120 of us. They asked, "Did you want to talk to the psychologist?" And he said yes. "Okay, I'm going to make you an appointment." But from there, we never heard from them. They never returned. The psychologist never came back in all of the months that I was there. Honestly, your mental health, it's up to you and your friends. They try to help you with things like God will help you, stay strong, have faith. But for your mental health, no one's going to help you. No one's going to ask how you're doing, if you have anything. If you're laying in your bed, they don't care. They don't really put a lot of importance in it.
What they're telling us is that tensions are really high between the guards amongst detainees. There's a lot of fighting, and this is due to the lack of water, the lack of food, the lack of medical care, and just the uncertainty of not knowing when you're getting out.
They were locked up for the very first time in their life, so they were used to having freedom, going to work, being with family, and now they were locked in a cage. All of that supported that line of they treat us like dogs, and it took me a while to accept that feeling and that line, and ultimately ended up being the title of a report.
And no human being deserves that. Even they treat better criminals than us. Like, I think criminals, they can get released. They probably have more benefits and all that. When they don't allow us to have a phone, to take our family, nothing. And why? Because it's about business.
Immigration treated us like criminals. Really, when they put handcuffs, when they put chains on our hands and feet, we would ask them, why are you doing this if we have not committed any crime? We're not criminals. We have not done anything for you to be treating us like this. And they would say, these are orders from above, these are orders from above. And we would tell them, but this is unfair. We understand that you put handcuffs on our hands, even though we don't agree because we're not criminals. But I can see why the handcuffs on the hands. But for you to put chains on my waist and cuffs on our feet with chains, and for tying our hands to our waist with chains, we are not criminals. Really, we are trying to do things the right way. We're following everything right. We respected the laws of the country. To put chains on our waist, for you to put cuffs on the feet with chains and tie hands to the waist, we're not criminals.
This facility has proven over the years that they can't provide the adequate services, medical, mental health services for people, especially with people with disabilities.
You can have hip problems, they're pain, headache. They just give you like a little Tylenol, that's it. If not, you have to buy it in the commissary.
If they had any medication, and if they would extract the molar, they said no, because you have to be detained at least 6 months in order to get the molar extracted. They only had Tylenol, and it took like 6 hours for them to give you one Tylenol. And for example, I got sick many times, and I had to send in a kite. You have to send in a kite to have a nurse come out, but I never got a response. I never saw anyone. No one asked me. And it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people, because in the beginning, everybody was ill, because everything was really, really dirty. So everybody was ill.
I think our opinion as DRC, that we don't think that people with disabilities can be adequately housed at this facility.
In 2023 is when the Shutdown Adelanto Coalition got notice that the detention center was on a short list for closure. And so what that meant was that the government was reevaluating the contracts, and Adelanto was at the top of the list to be shut down. As we were doing the advocacy work and we went to even DC to talk to legislators, it seemed that everyone was on board. But unfortunately, I think with the incoming administration that potentially was coming, which was the Trump administration, they had different plans. So it did not get shut down. And now we're seeing the effects of that, right? Like the population boomed from like 3 people to now being at full capacity at almost 2,000 people being detained, plus the Desert View Annex, which is a separate building, which has capacity for 750 people.
There is a financial incentive for this for-profit facility to hold people and also withhold medical spending or not provide an adequate services such as dental health care.
The policy changes that this administration has done, there's more raids in our community. And so if there's more detention capacity, there's going to be more enforcement, and they have to fill the beds. This is taxpayer money going to this, and conditions are just worsening every day.
Following our investigation and after speaking with many people in the detention facility, we followed up with ICE to do some requests for accommodations or medical care. It confirmed a lot of what we had found in terms of there being a lack of medical care or accommodations for people. Subsequently, I came back and talked to some of the people who ICE told us had gotten, the correct medical care. They reported to us that that's not the case, that they're still waiting, and this is, now we're talking months of them being there, not having the correct medications, not having accommodations that would be necessary for them as a person with a disability.
What really impacted me was when my uncle, who was going through cancer treatment, was detained by immigration and sent here to Adelanto because he had unpaid traffic tickets. Really, that was what really shook me to my core. And at that time, I was a university student, so I didn't know that much about what advocacy I could do. I didn't know how to help. After that experience, I really felt like there had to be something else I could do. There had to be a way for me to help others who were in the same position as me and my family.
The intersection of immigration is personal to me as well. You know, my family are immigrants. You know, I was born here, but my parents are both immigrants from South America, and so it really is personal to me. I have, you know, other family members who have mixed status and have had to deal with this situation of and the fear, you know, the anxiety of not knowing, you know, what's going to happen based on enforcement and, you know, how the government is currently, you know, processing people.
The disability community is really close to my heart. For years, I've been involved in supporting individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, and one of the reasons I'm really engaged in this work is because I am so concerned about the families I serve. It's my nightmare to think about someone with autism, someone that's deaf, someone that's blind being held in a facility like Adelanto. That's why I'm doing the work that I do.
My family came to the United States 2 or 3 generations ago, fleeing the Mexican Civil War. My great-grandparents died in the Arizona mines, mining for copper and that kind of extractive industry, to the point where my great-grandmother moved to Los Angeles after basically her parents and all her brothers had died from exposure to the mining practices there. Many of my relatives worked in the railroad industry, contributing and sacrificing their bodies to build the infrastructure of this country, and yeah, pay their way through monetarily and through their health and safety.
People with disabilities need to live in a therapeutic setting where they can cope and manage their symptoms. Meanwhile, any of the other court proceedings need to happen or processing needs to happen. Adelanto is just not an appropriate place for people with disabilities. This is just not a humane place for people. It's heavy. It's heavy to do this work.
I always say that this work is intersectional. It's not only about the immigrant identity, but it's uplifting folks with disabilities, folks who are the working class.
The problems throughout this system are pretty similar, that it's, you know, unfortunately has become really more about profit for these private prison corporations over treatment of people, over, you know, just, you know, general humanity. That brings you back to, you know, the title of a report, which is what people told us, which is that they're being treated like dogs in cages. I think it's a symptom of the whole system, and is a problem that hopefully, you know, this report will help to shine more light on this recurring problem, and we can do something about it.